Sukkah, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Zayin. We learnt in the previous Mishnah a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir as to whether using boards which are between 3 and 4 tefachim was permissible for a sukkah. We've also learned previously a principle of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'osui, which means one must make a sukkah, according to Beis Hillel, not necessarily for sukkahs, but one must make a sukkah rather than using a place where one would live permanently throughout the year. One must make a sukkah, ta'aseh. And if one didn't make this sukkah as a sukkah, but now wants to use it as a sukkah, that would be disqualified because it wasn't specifically made as a sukkah. This Mishnah starts off, Tikra she'ein oleho ma'azivo. This is a roof made of these boards between 3 and 4 tefachim, but it doesn't yet have plaster. But now the person would like to use this roofing as kosher schach for his sukkah. It has therefore 2 disqualifications. One, it was placed for normal roofing for the whole year of his house. Number 2, a person clearly would get confused, as we learnt in the previous Mishnah, the idea that if boards are too large, one could get confused and think one could sit inside one's normal house. In this case, where these boards were specifically made for his house, there could be confusion if these boards would be used for sukkahs. Says Rabbi Yehuda, about this and how to rectify the situations, a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omrim mefakpeik v'notel achas mi beinosayim. Just by lifting up these boards between 3 and 4 tefachim and replacing them, that would not be sufficient. It might be sufficient because now I'm actually making directly my sukkah, but a person might still get confused as it was initially part of his normal roofing. Therefore, mefakpeik means loosening and replacing. Even if a person were to do that, still v'notel achas mi beinosayim, he must remove one of these beams between 2 and replace that beam with kosher schach. Beis Hillel omrim, no. One can do either one of these 2 methods we mentioned, and that would remove both disqualifications. What does that mean? Beis Hillel omrim mefakpeik. You can loosen the boards from the nails and replace them. And because these boards are between 3 and 4 tefachim, that would be sufficient to be used for schach. And also a person would now get confused because he's lifted them up and made an action to show that he's making this his sukkah. Therefore, mefakpeik, he can loosen the boards and replace them. Oy noitel achas mi beinosayim, or he can remove between 2, he can remove the beams and replace with kosher schach. Any one of those 2 methods would allow this sukkah to be used. Rabbi Meir says no. Only one of these methods would work, even according to Beis Hillel. Noitel achas mi beinosayim. He must remove one of the beams, one between 2, and replace with kosher schach, making the schach at least not in the minority compared to the schach, which would be just the other beams. So again, he'd remove the beams, replace with kosher schach, and have the current beams in place. but he could not remove the beams and then replace them with the same beams. The Ein Mefakbek, he cannot loosen the boards and just replace them in the same form as they are at the moment. And the reason for that, because Rab Meir held from the previous Mishnah, that boards between 3 and 4 are possible for schach, and the reason for that is because a person may get confused and think that they are allowed to sit in their normal home.